Hey guys, before we get started, I just wanted to say that this video might cover some intermediate Python stuff like 2D arrays or functions. So if you haven't learned about those, I suggest you go learn about this before you watch this video. But otherwise, just sit back and code along.
Hey guys, this is Christopher, and today in this video we will be building the classic arcade game Tetris. For those of you who do not know what Tetris is a game where you have to place different shaped blocks, and the goal of the game is to try to fit the blocks as tightly together as possible so that they don't build up all the way to the top of the screen. So in Tetris, you have to be able to move the blocks and place them wherever you want and rotate them. And then, as you can see, just like in the original game, once you clear once one row has been completely filled up, the row will delete itself, allowing for a bonus or like an extra prize that you can get to stop your tower from building all the way to the top of the screen. So to do this, we will be using tkinter, as you can see here. So let's get started. So first, let's import tkinter. So from tkinter, import asterisks. Now the reason we do this instead of just importing tkinter like import tkinter is because down the line when we want to call something from tkinter, we won't have to write tkinter dot and then whatever we want to call or whatever we want to get. If we use from tkinter import, we don't have to type tkinter dot and then we can just use the function straight off, which saves a bit of time. So first, let's get our tkinter window started. So just type, I'm going to name this variable window, and it's going to store the tkinter window object in it. So window equals tk, which is how you call a window in tkinter. If we just had import tkinter, we would have had to type tkinter dot tk. But now we can just type tk. It's much simpler. And let's set the window title to Tetris. Window.title, Tetris. And now, to actually be able to draw shapes onto the window, we need a canvas, which is a built-in tkinter object that can be put onto a window and allows us to draw things on it. So basically, it's just CVS, which is short for canvas. And this CVS variable or canvas variable is going to store the canvas that we will use to put on the window. So canvas equals canvas with the capital C, window. The first input in canvas is always just the TK window that you want to put it on. So window, and then we set the height to 800, width to, I think, around 200 is a good number. Width, actually 390 is a better fit. Equals 390, and let's set the background to red. Now to actually put the canvas inside the window, we just do cvs.pack. And now when we run it, it doesn't do anything because the window suddenly appears and then disappears. So to make sure that we can see the window, let's set up a while loop. So basically, while true, window.update. This basically allows us to see the window, and then it continually updates the window so we can see it. So now you can see we have a nice window, pretty long, but it has a nice red background that we can draw on now. So now we're gonna create a 2D grid. So I'm gonna first define the dimensions of this grid with two variables, m and n, m for the width and n for the height. So m equals 14, n equals 22. And then now let's define the size of the block that we want. So block width equals 26, block height equals 26, block gap equals 2. And yeah, these are the dimensions of the block that we're going to draw on the screen. Now to actually do this and set the colors and everything and make it look cool, we have to store a 2D list or array of squares. So we'll have two 2D lists, one to store the block objects and the other one to store the values of the blocks. So basically, to check if the block is either the edge or the blank part that you can actually put the blocks will fall in. So basically, either if it's the edge or if it's the center. So now let's initiate that grid with a for loop for I in range m. First, let's append an empty list to each of the block and the matrix list. MAT stands for matrix, if you guys didn't already figure that out. Now that we've added that to the list, let's add for j in range n x. So this is basically the x and y position of each block. So x equals 100 plus I times block width plus block gap. Oops. Now the y will be just 50 plus j times block height plus block gap. And then so we get this way we can get the x and the y value of every block without having to hard code in the x and the y by itself. We can just use this neat trick that calculates the space already put in, and then we can just get the position of the block instead of having to calculate where each block should be. It should be pretty simple, and it'll show up in a second. So now we want to make the edges of the 2D grid. We want to make the edges of the 2D grid red and then the center white. So if I equals 0, so basically if it's the edge, or I equals m minus 1, or j equals 0, or j equals n minus 1, you can set the value to 1, and then the fill color to red. So the value will be whether or not, so the value will basically be if it's a static block or if it's an empty block where another block can move through. So, and then if it's on the edge is what this if statement is checking. If it's on the edge, value equals 1, the fill color equals red. But otherwise, we'll set the value to 0, which means it's an empty block. Value equals 0 and f color equals white. And then now block ID, which is basically the name for a new block, equals canvas.create rectangle. So what this does, it's a tkinter function that can be called from a canvas, and it will create a rectangle, and it takes in the parameters x1, y1, and x2, y2, which are the upper and lower diagonal corners of one of the rectangles. Sorry. So now if we create rectangle x, y, so that's the first x1 and y1, and then x2 will be x plus block width, and then y2 will be y plus block height, and then outline equals yellow, because I found out that a yellow outline looks really cool on this type of grid. And then fill equals f color. So that now we append this block to the row list of the row list of the block list. So basically, we're going to go over each row, and then we're going to add blocks to it. So we'll use one list to store the block object itself, and then another list to store the value of the block, like whether or not it's empty. So yeah, now you can see, if we run it, we get a nice little off-centered screen. So what I've done wrong is that I forgot that the order of operations follow the order of operations. So we'll add the block height and the block gap, and then when we run it, okay, yeah, I don't need the offset there. Sorry, I was working with a bigger window earlier. So now you can see we have a nice, nice little grid. And I forgot to unindent these. So now when you run it, yeah, this is what it should be. You see this nice grid. And yeah, the first part of our project is done. So now, just to get this out of the way first, let's check if we can get the key presses from the tkinter library. So let's create a function called keypress, set an event parameter, and then print event dot keysim. And now cvs dot bind all key, and then it takes in a function, so key press. So basically what this does now is that it will bind the keys to the bind the key press function to the keys. So now you can see when we press a key, it'll, in the console over here, it'll print out the name of the key. So now return, you can see. So we'll be using all of these to control the left, up, right, down, and arrows and the spacebar to rotate the pieces later on. So yeah, now all we have to do is get the shapes moving and let the users be able to play the game.
Thanks for watching this video. If you found it useful, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and stick tuned for part 2.